I 34 just found out my wife 32F has been cheating on me, and my entire life feels like a lie. I never thought I'd be the guy posting on a relationship advice subreddit. I've spent years reading stories on here and thinking, how do people not see the signs? Now I understand. When it's your own life, you explain everything away because the alternative is too painful to consider. My wife and I have been together for 11 years, married for 7. Until recently, I genuinely believed we had a solid marriage. Not perfect, but stable. We owned a house together. We had a dog. We talked about having kids someday. We had plans. Or at least I thought we did. Looking back, the first signs appeared about 6 months ago. She became distant, but not in an obvious way. It wasn't like she suddenly stopped talking to me. Instead, it felt like every conversation became shallow. Whenever I asked about her day, I'd get one-word answers. Fine, busy, nothing interesting. At the same time, she suddenly became glued to her phone. She used to leave it lying around everywhere. Kitchen counter, couch cushions, bathroom sink. Then one day it was like the phone became attached to her hand. If I walked into the room unexpectedly, she'd lock the screen. If I sat next to her on the couch, she'd angle it away. If I asked who she was texting, she'd get irritated. Why do you always need to know everything? That caught me off guard because I wasn't interrogating her. I was making normal conversation. Then came the late nights. Her company had apparently started some huge project. Suddenly she was staying late 3 or 4 times a week. I tried being supportive. I'd cook dinner. I'd save her a plate. I'd text to ask if she was okay. Sometimes she'd respond hours later, sometimes not at all. When she got home, she'd act annoyed that I was worried. Can you stop treating me like a child? That became her favorite line. I started feeling like I was constantly apologizing for things I hadn't done. Sorry for asking where you were. Sorry for wondering why you're home at midnight. Sorry for noticing you've barely touched me in weeks. The weirdest part was that every time I brought up concerns, she'd somehow make me feel guilty. By the end of the conversation, I'd be apologizing to her. I convinced myself I was overthinking. Maybe work really was stressful. Maybe she was depressed. Maybe I was insecure. Maybe I was imagining things. Then, about a month ago, something happened that I still can't stop thinking about. I woke up at around 2 a.m. and noticed she wasn't in bed. At first, I assumed she was in the bathroom. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. I got up and went downstairs. The lights were off. The TV was off. The entire house was dark, except for a faint glow coming from the back patio. I looked through the sliding glass door and saw my wife sitting outside alone, smiling at her phone. Not just smiling. The kind of smile people get when they're talking to someone they can't stop thinking about. The kind of smile I hadn't seen directed at me in a very long time. The second she noticed me standing there, her expression changed. The smile disappeared instantly. She locked her phone and walked inside. Who are you talking to? I asked. No one. At the time, I let it go. Now I wish I hadn't, because that moment was the beginning of everything falling apart. After the patio incident, I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid. People smile at their phones all the time. Friends send funny videos. Coworkers tell jokes. Family members share old pictures. There were 100 innocent explanations. The problem was that none of those explanations matched my wife's behavior. Things kept getting stranger. About a week later, she started going to the gym. Now, before anyone says that's normal, I agree. The gym itself wasn't suspicious. The timing was. For 11 years, my wife hated exercising. She complained every time I suggested we go for a walk. She bought exercise equipment that collected dust. She once described running as voluntary suffering. Then suddenly she was going to the gym 5 days a week. New workout clothes, new shoes, new water bottle, new hairstyle, new perfume. The perfume really stood out. She had worn the same fragrance for years. Then one day she came home with an expensive bottle I'd never seen before. When I complimented it, she looked almost uncomfortable. Thanks. That was it. No discussion, no excitement. Just thanks. A few days later, another weird thing happened. I called her during lunch. She declined the call. Not unusual. People get busy. I texted her instead. No response. 3 hours later, she finally replied. In a meeting. The message felt off. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was desperation. I don't know. But for some reason, I checked her company's website. The office directory listed her department. Then I called the front desk. I didn't ask anything suspicious. I simply asked to be transferred to her extension. The receptionist paused. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. Oh, she left about 2 hours ago. I remember staring at my phone. I actually checked the screen to make sure I'd heard correctly. 2 hours ago. But according to her text, she was currently in a meeting. My hands started shaking. Not because I knew she was cheating, because I suddenly knew she was lying. There was no misunderstanding, no gray area, no overthinking. A lie is a lie. When she got home that night, I gave her every opportunity to explain. How was your meeting? Without hesitation, she answered. What? I felt my chest tighten. What was it about? She launched into a detailed explanation. Project deadlines, budget issues, management concerns. She just kept talking, lie after lie after lie. I sat there listening to my own wife invent an entire story. The scary part wasn't that she lied. It was how easily she did it. There wasn't a second of hesitation, no nervousness, no guilt, nothing. When she finished, she looked at me and smiled. What? I asked. What do you mean? Why are you lying? Her face changed immediately. Not panic, anger, instant anger. What are you talking about? The office said you left hours earlier. For a split second, I saw something in her eyes. Yuck! Then it vanished, and she pivoted so fast it made my head spin. I can't believe you're calling my workplace to spy on me. Suddenly, I was the bad guy. Suddenly, she was offended. Suddenly, we weren't discussing her lie anymore. We were discussing my behavior. She accused me of being controlling, paranoid, insecure, obsessive. By the end of the argument, she stormed upstairs and slept in the guest room. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. No apology, no explanation, nothing. And that's when I made the decision that eventually destroyed my marriage. I stopped asking questions. Instead, I started paying attention. What I didn't know was that within 48 hours, I was going to stumble onto the first piece of evidence that would make everything impossible to deny. For the next couple of days, I kept my mouth shut. No accusations, no arguments, no questions. If she was lying to me, I wanted to know how far it went. The weird thing was that once I stopped confronting her, she seemed happier, almost relieved. She spent more time on her phone than ever. She laughed at messages. She smiled at notifications. She even started taking the phone into the shower with her. Who takes a phone into the shower? Meanwhile, I felt like I was losing my mind. Every interaction started feeling fake. Every hug felt rehearsed. Every love you sounded automatic. Then something happened completely by accident. I was at work when my phone buzzed. A text from my wife. At first I smiled. That had become rare. Then I opened it. My stomach dropped. The message wasn't meant for me. Last night was amazing, that's all it said. Just one sentence. One little sentence. But I knew immediately. Nobody accidentally sends that to their husband. Not when we'd spent the previous night sitting on opposite ends of the couch watching television. I stared at the screen. For several seconds I couldn't even think. My brain was trying to force a different explanation. Maybe it was for a friend. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe before I could finish the thought, another message arrived. Oh my god, ignore that. Then another. Wrong person. Then another. I was talking to Sarah. So, of course, the mysterious friend who apparently received heart emojis after amazing nights. I didn't respond. A minute later she called. I answered. She sounded panicked, not embarrassed. Panicked. Did you get that text? No, it wasn't what it looked like. Okay. I sent it to Sarah. Okay. The silence on the line became awkward. I think she expected me to argue. Instead, I just listened. She kept talking. The explanations started changing every 30 seconds. First it was a joke, then it was about a girl's night, then it was about a movie they'd watched, then it was apparently an inside joke. The story kept evolving. Every new version contradicted the previous one. Finally, she snapped. Why are you making this such a big deal? That almost made me laugh. She had accidentally sent a romantic text to her husband that was clearly intended for someone else, and somehow I was the one creating drama. I ended the call. For the rest of the day, she bombarded me with messages. Dozens of them. Long paragraphs. Excuses. Explanations. Deflections. By the time I got home, she was waiting. The second I walked through the door, she launched into another speech. I feel like you don't trust me. That sentence nearly broke me. Not because it was true, because she said it with complete sincerity, as if she were the victim, as if I had wronged her, as if I was the one hiding things. The conversation went nowhere. Every question had a different answer. Every answer led to another contradiction. Eventually, I gave up. I told her I was tired. I went upstairs, and for the first time in our entire relationship, I locked the bedroom door. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed for hours, just staring at the wall, thinking, replaying every strange interaction from the past 6 months. The late nights, the lies, the secretive phone, the gel, the perfume, the texts. One by one, the puzzle pieces started fitting together. But I still didn't have proof, only suspicions. And unfortunately for me, proof arrived much sooner than I expected. 2 nights later, at around 11 p.m. someone knocked on my front door. A complete stranger. and what he told me next changed everything. I still remember the exact sound of that knock. 3 sharp knocks, late enough that nobody should have been visiting. My wife was supposedly working late again. I was alone in the house with the dog. When I opened the door, there was a man standing on my porch, maybe mid-30s, well-dressed, nervous, the kind of nervous where someone keeps looking over their shoulder. For a second I thought he had the wrong address. Then he asked my name. I confirmed it. His face immediately fell. That's when my stomach started sinking. "Can we talk?" he asked. Every instinct in my body told me this wasn't going to be good. We sat at my kitchen table. Neither of us spoke for almost a minute. Finally, he pulled out his phone. "I think your wife has been seeing my wife." I genuinely didn't understand what he meant. For several seconds, I thought I'd misheard him. Then he clarified. Not friendship, not work, not socializing, an affair. According to him, he discovered messages between his wife and my wife a few weeks earlier. Romantic messages, explicit messages, plans to meet up, the works. I just stared at him. The possibility had never even crossed my mind. I had been focused on the idea that she was cheating with another man. The thought that she might be involved with a woman hadn't even entered my head. Then he showed me screenshots, dozens of them. Some were flirtatious, some were intimate, some made me physically sick to read. And there was my wife's name, her profile picture, her words. No room for interpretation, no room for denial. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. The stranger, I'll call him Mike, looked just as exhausted as I felt. Apparently he'd spent weeks trying to figure out what was going on. His wife kept denying everything, kept changing her story, kept insisting they were just friends. Every time he found evidence, a new excuse appeared. The more he talked, the more familiar it sounded. It was like listening to someone describe my own marriage. The same lies, the same deflections, the same anger whenever questions were asked. Then Mike said something that hit me like a truck. "They've been making fun of us." I looked. "Oh, what?" He handed me the phone again. There was a conversation. My wife and his wife, joking about how clueless their husbands were, laughing about excuses they'd used, making fun of concerns we'd raised. I felt something inside me break. Not the affair itself. Not yet. The disrespect. That was what got me. I had spent months questioning my own sanity. Months believing her when she called me paranoid. Months apologizing for things that weren't my fault. And behind the scenes, she was laughing about it. I don't think I've ever felt humiliation like that before. Mike left around midnight. Before he went, we exchanged numbers. He said he'd send me everything he had. As soon as he drove away, I sat alone in the kitchen, completely numb. No tears, no anger, nothing, just emptiness. Then my phone buzzed. A text from my wife. "Running late. Love you." I looked at that message for a long time. The heart emoji, the casual affection, the effortless lie. For the first time, I knew with absolute certainty that she was cheating. And for the first time, I stopped wondering whether I was overreacting. The real question wasn't whether she was having an affair anymore. The real question was how many lies I hadn't discovered yet. I got the answer less than an hour later, because at 1:17 a.m. my wife's car pulled into the driveway, and she wasn't alone. I wish I could say I had some master plan. I didn't. I was sitting in the dark living room, staring out the front window when headlights turned into our driveway. 1:17 a.m. My wife's car. Right behind it was another vehicle, a black SUV I'd never seen before. Both cars stopped. For a moment, nobody got out. Then I watched the driver's door of the SUV open. A woman stepped out. I recognized her immediately. She was Mike's wife, the same woman from the screenshots. The same woman whose messages I had been reading less than 2 hours earlier. My heart started hammering. The two of them stood between the vehicles talking, laughing, completely relaxed, like they didn't have a care in the world. Then they kissed. Not a quick peck, not something that could be explained away. A kiss, long enough that even from inside the house there was no mistaking it. I felt sick. Months of doubt disappeared in an instant. There it was, the truth, right in front of me. Then everything happened fast, really fast. I opened the front door. Hud. The sound echoed across the driveway. Both of them jumped. My wife spun around. The look on her face was something I'll never forget. Pure panic. For a split second, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The entire world felt frozen. Then my wife said the dumbest thing I have ever heard. "It's not what it looks like." I actually laughed. Not because anything was funny, because my brain couldn't process that she'd chosen the most cliché line imaginable. Mike's wife immediately backed away toward her SUV. My wife started walking toward me. Fast? Too fast. Like she was trying to regain control of the situation before it completely collapsed. "Listen to me." "No, please." "No." She kept talking anyway. Words started pouring out of her. Excuses, explanations, half-finished sentences, nothing coherent. I remember one specific thing she said. We were just talking at 2 in the morning, after kissing in the driveway. Apparently, we were expected to believe that. Then something unexpected happened. Mike's wife rolled down her window and shouted, "Just tell him the truth already." The silence afterward was deafening. My wife looked horrified, like she'd just been betrayed herself. For a brief moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered everything. The lies, the gaslighting, the mocking messages, the fake concern, the fake love, the months of manipulation. The sympathy disappeared instantly. I asked one simple question. How long? She froze. I don't know. Why? How long? A few weeks. Why? I already had screenshots going back months. How long? Her eyes filled with tears, and then she gave me the first honest answer I'd heard in a very long time. About 7 months. 7 months. More than half a year. 7 months of lies. 7 months of making me feel crazy. 7 months of coming home and looking me in the eyes while pretending everything was normal. I wish I could say I yelled. I wish I could say I lost control. Instead, I felt strangely calm. The anger was gone. The sadness was gone. All that remained was certainty. I looked at her and realized I didn't know who she was anymore. The woman standing in front of me wasn't my wife. Not really. My wife would never have done this. At least that's what I'd believed. Then came the sentence that changed the entire night. The sentence that somehow made everything worse. She looked directly at me and said, "I was going to tell you after the vacation." Vacation. The vacation we'd been planning together. The vacation we'd already paid for. The romantic anniversary trip she'd spent months pretending to be excited about. She had been planning to smile through that entire trip, and then drop the truth on me afterward. That's when I finally got angry. And what happened next was the first real confrontation of our marriage. I don't even remember raising my voice at first. It just came out. "You were going to take me on vacation." She flinched like I'd slapped her. Mike's wife was still in the SUV, watching everything like it was a live car crash she couldn't look away from. My wife tried to step closer again. "Please, just listen." No, I cut her off. "You don't get to please listen me after 7 months. That's when she switched tactics. Instantly, like a light switch. I was confused, she said. Confused. I remember actually blinking at that word. Confused. Not guilty. Not sorry. Confused. She kept going, words spilling faster now, like she was trying to outrun the consequences. "You've been distant too. You were always working, always tired. You weren't really there." I laughed again. But this time it wasn't empty. It was sharp. "You're blaming me?" "I'm not blaming you," she snapped. Then immediately softened her tone again like she realized she'd miscalculated. "I'm just saying things were good between us." That's when Mike's wife yelled from the car again. "Oh my God, you're still doing it." My wife shot her a look so full of rage it honestly surprised me. Then she turned back to me and did something even worse. She started crying. Real tears, the kind that would have worked on me 6 months ago. Maybe even 3. "I didn't want it to happen like this," she said. "I tried to stop it. Stop it, like this was a force of nature, like she tripped and fell into someone else's arms for 7 months. I just stared at her, and I realized something really ugly. She genuinely believed her own story. Or at least she needed to, because admitting the truth meant admitting she chose this. Every day, for months, there was a pause, a long one, only the sound of an engine idling and distant street noise. Then I asked the question I'd been avoiding since Mike showed up at my door. "Are you in love with her?" She didn't answer immediately. That hesitation told me everything. Finally, she said, "I don't know." That was it. The final crack. Not even a lie this time. Just emotional cowardice wrapped in uncertainty. I nodded slowly, strangely calm again. Then I said something I didn't plan. Something that surprised even me. "Get out of the house." She froze. "What?" "Get your things. And get out." Her face changed immediately. "No, we can talk about this." "You're not thinking straight." "I am thinking straight for the first time in months." She tried again. "You can't just throw away our marriage like this." That line. That exact line. After everything, I felt something inside me shut off completely. 7 months, I said. You already threw it away. I'm just cleaning up what's left. Silence. Mike's wife shut off her engine and stepped out again, like she wasn't sure if she should intervene or not. My wife looked between us like the world had betrayed her. Then she did something unexpected again. She smiled, not a happy smile, a thin, angry one. "You're going to regret this." That should have scared me. It didn't. It just confirmed everything. Because in that moment I finally understood. She wasn't sorry it happened. She was sorry she got caught. And that was the moment I stopped seeing her as my wife at all. She didn't leave immediately. Of course she didn't. Nothing about the past 7 months suggested she was capable of clean endings. Instead, she went inside and started packing like she was the one being wronged. I followed her in after a minute, mostly because I didn't trust what she might take or delete or reframe on her way out. Mike's wife stayed outside, leaning against her SUV, texting someone non-stop. My wife moved through the house like she owned the right to it more than I did. Closet doors open, drawers slammed shut, suitcase dragged out from under the bed, and she talked the entire time. Not to me. I meant, this is insane. You're being dramatic. You always do this thing where you shut down and make everything about your feelings. That one almost made me stop laughing out loud. She paused at the dresser, holding a stack of clothes, and looked at me like I was the problem in the room. You think you're perfect? He asked. That's when I realized something important. She wasn't escalating. She was rewriting. Right there, in real time, turning herself into the victim so she could survive her own choices. I leaned against the doorway. I never said I was perfect, I said. I said I didn't cheat on you for 7 months. That shut her up for maybe 2 seconds. Then she doubled down. You don't understand what it was like, she said. There it was again. The justification phase. The if you knew what I felt defense. I stepped into the room a bit more, then explain it. She hesitated, just long enough. And then she said, he understood me. That was it. Not even a full explanation, just that. He understood me. I felt something twist in my chest. Not jealousy, not sadness, just clarity. Because I suddenly realized this wasn't some accidental emotional drift. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't a mistake that happened. It was intentional. She chose someone who made her feel good, and then chose to hide it from me every single day. Outside, I heard a car door slam. Mike's wife was now standing on the porch, watching us, silent, like she was waiting for her own life to implode next. My wife noticed her too, and her voice changed again. Harder, angrier. You're loving this, aren't you? She said, pointing slightly toward the door. Mike's wife didn't respond. She just shook her head slowly. I'm not the one lying, she said quietly. That landed harder than anything else that night. My wife turned back to me, suddenly panicked again. This is fixable, she said quickly. People get through worse. We can go to therapy. I interrupted her. Stop. She did it. She stepped closer, grabbed my arm. That was the first time she touched me since I saw her kiss someone else. And it felt wrong. Like touching a stranger. Don't do this, she said, softer now. And I realized she wasn't asking. She was trying to regain control. Like if she said the right words, she could undo the timeline. I gently pulled my arm away and said something I didn't fully understand until I heard myself say it. I'm already done. That's when her expression finally broke. Not anger, not manipulation, something closer to fear. Because she realized, for the first time that night, that I wasn't reacting anymore. I was deciding, and she had no say in it. Outside, Mike's wife spoke again almost to herself. Yeah, that's how it starts. My wife froze, and for the first time, she didn't have a response. After I said I was done, something shifted. Not in her behavior at first, in the atmosphere. Like the house finally understood what was happening. She stopped packing for a moment, just stood there with a half-folded shirt in her hands, breathing fast. Then she did something I didn't expect. She sat down on the edge of the bed, like her body gave up before her pride did. I didn't want it to become this, she said quietly. I stayed standing, didn't respond, because I'd heard that sentence too many times already. I didn't plan it, she added quickly, like that made it better. It just happened. I laughed again, but it came out tired this time. It just happened for 7 months. She flinched. Silence again. From outside, I heard Mike's wife pacing on the porch. I could feel her presence like she didn't want to be part of it anymore but couldn't walk away. My wife looked up at me, and then, finally, she said something real. Not a script, not a defense. I was unhappy. That was it. No elaboration, just that. I nodded slowly. So was I. She blinked, like she hadn't expected that answer. Then she rushed to fill the gap. You weren't there, she said again, faster now. You were always working. We barely talked. I felt alone all the time. There it was, the foundation of her story, the justification she had been rehearsing for months. I walked a few steps into the room, and for the first time that night, I didn't feel emotional. I felt analytical, like I was looking at something I'd studied too long. You could have left, I said. That stopped her completely. I didn't force you to stay. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out, because that was the problem. She did have other options. Therapy, separation, honest conversation, literally anything that didn't involve lying every day for half a year. Instead, she chose secrecy. She chose duplication. 2 lies, one for me, one for her. And then I said the part I didn't plan to say, you didn't cheat because you were unhappy. Her eyes narrowed slightly. I continued, you cheated because you wanted both. That landed. Her face tightened, and for a second I thought she might explode again. But instead she went quiet. Too quiet. Then, almost whispering, she said, you don't understand what she makes me feel like. That was the first time she explicitly referred to her. Not a friend. Not someone. However, the mask slipped just enough. Outside, Mike's wife let out a breath like she'd been holding it for months. I felt something settle inside me. Confirmation. Not surprise anymore. Just confirmation. My wife realized what she'd said too late, and immediately tried to walk it back. I mean, she understands me. It's not, but I stopped her. No, I said, you already said it. And that was the moment everything stopped being ambiguous. No more interpretations. No more doubt. Just reality sitting in the middle of the room like a dead weight. She looked at me, and for the first time, she didn't argue. Because there was nothing left to argue. Only consequences. And they were already here. After she said it out loud, everything got quieter. Not in a peaceful way. In a hollow way. Like the house had stopped participating. She didn't move for a while. Just sat there on the bed, staring at the floor, like she was waiting for me to undo what she had just admitted. I didn't. Instead, I asked the only question that felt relevant anymore. Who is she to you? She hesitated again, but this time there was no anger behind it. Just exhaustion. A coworker, she said, then quickly added, well used to be. We met through work events. I nodded. No. She flinched slightly. I don't think that matters. That made me laugh again, but more bitter this time. It matters to the person whose marriage you destroyed. Silence. Outside, I heard Mike's wife speaking quietly on the phone now, pacing back and forth like she was trying to hold her own life together while watching mine fall apart. My wife finally spoke again. We tried to stop it, she said. I blinked. She immediately corrected herself. I mean, it wasn't like that. It started as just talking. That phrase again. Just talking. It always starts there, doesn't it? Just talking. Just venting. Just being understood. Just one message. Just one night. Just 7 months. I stepped closer to the bed. And then what? I asked. She looked up at me. And for a split second, she looked younger. Not innocent. Just overwhelmed by consequences she never thought she'd actually face. Then it became easier than coming home, she admitted. That was the most honest thing she had said all night. And it was worse than any lie. Because it confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't confusion. It was avoidance. Intentional, repeated avoidance. I sat down in the chair across from her. Not because I was softening. Because I was done standing. Did you ever plan to tell me? I asked. She nodded quickly. That's what? She hesitated. Then said the word I already heard before, vacation. I closed my eyes for a second. That vacation again. The imaginary clean ending she had built for herself. The idea that she could enjoy one more perfect moment of our life before destroying it. I shook my head slowly. You don't get to schedule betrayal like it's a meeting, I said. She didn't respond. Because she knew I was right. Outside, I heard Mike's wife say something I couldn't fully hear, but it sounded like she was crying now. My wife noticed it too, and for the first time, she looked uncomfortable with what she had become part of. Not guilty, just exposed. Then she asked something unexpected. What happens now? I looked at her and realized that question was no longer mine to answer emotionally. It was procedural now. Simple. Final. You leave, I said. She swallowed hard. And us? There is no us, I said. And this time, she didn't argue. Not because she accepted it, but because she finally understood it wasn't negotiable anymore. From outside, the car door opened again. Mike's wife stepped off the porch, and I knew the night was about to enter its final phase. Because the truth was now fully out in the open, and there was nowhere left for anyone to hide it. Mike's wife came inside without knocking. She didn't ask permission. She just walked in like she'd reached the limit of what she could tolerate outside. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. I can't do this out there anymore, she said. My wife stiffened immediately. Like the presence of the other woman made everything more real than she could handle. For a second, nobody spoke. Then Mike's wife looked directly at her and said, we need to finish this. My wife's jaw tightened. This isn't your house, she snapped. No, she replied calmly, but I've been living your lies for months too. That shut her up. Not completely, but enough. Mike's wife turned to me. I showed you everything already, she said. What, there's more? My stomach sank again, because I thought I had already hit the bottom. Apparently not. She pulled out her phone, scrolled for a second, and handed it to me. This time it wasn't just messages. It was voice notes. My wife's voice, laughing, complaining about me, describing me like I was a problem she was managing rather than a person she once loved. One of them hit especially hard. She doesn't suspect anything. He is so predictable lately. I stopped playing it, handed the phone back. Didn't need more. My wife saw my face change and immediately reacted. That's not what I meant, she said quickly. But I didn't even look at her. I just said, it's exactly what you meant. Mike's wife finally sat down in a chair near the door, exhausted. I left him tonight, she said quietly. That caught my attention. My wife looked at her sharply. You what? I left, she repeated. After I saw the messages between you two. That was the first time the word us actually landed in the room. Not as a secret, but as a shared responsibility. My wife shook her head. This is insane, she muttered. You're both acting like I committed a crime. I laughed again, but there was nothing left in it. You didn't commit a crime, I said. You just destroyed 2 marriages and lied about it for months. She opened her mouth, closed it. Nothing came out, because for the first time, there was no version of events she could switch to. No angle, no narrative, just facts. Mike's wife looked at her and said something quietly that I won't forget. You made it a double life. We just lived in it. That hit harder than anything else. My wife stood up abruptly. I didn't mean for it to get like this, she said again. But this time even she didn't sound convinced. I stood up too, and I realized something important. We had entered the phase where repetition replaces truth. Same excuses, same denial, same collapse. And I was done listening. I walked to the hallway and grabbed her suitcase, carried it to the door, set it down, then looked at her. You can stay with her, I said. Her eyes widened. For a second, she looked like she might protest. But she didn't, because she knew exactly who I meant. Not Mike's wife, the other one. The person she had been building an entire secret life around. Mike's wife stood slowly and said, don't bring her into this. My wife flinched, but I continued anyway. Or don't. I don't care anymore. That was the moment something fully broke in her expression. Not sadness, not anger, something closer to realization that she no longer had 2 worlds, only one collapsing one, and I wasn't in it anymore. She didn't pick up the suitcase immediately. She just stood there staring at it like it wasn't real, like if she ignored it long enough, it would turn back into a normal night. Then she looked at me and switched again. That's the only way I can describe it. Like she found a different version of herself to try. Can we talk alone? She asked quietly. Mike's wife immediately shook her head. No, she said. You don't get alone anymore. That landed like a slap. My wife ignored her and kept looking at me. Just me. I made a mistake, she said. I actually nodded. Yes? Her eyes flickered, like she thought that was progress. Then I added, a 7-month-long mistake. That wiped it off her face. She tried again. I didn't plan this to hurt you. I laughed once. Short, dry. That's not how consequences work. Silence again. She took a step closer, reaching again for something familiar. We've been together for over a decade, she said softly. You're just going to throw that away? There it was again. The framing. Like I was the one initiating destruction. Like betrayal was something that could be balanced against time. I looked at her for a long moment, and I realized something I hadn't fully admitted yet. She still thought history mattered more than behavior. That if something lasted long enough, it became unbreakable. I shook my head. No, I said, you threw it away. I'm just acknowledging it's already gone. Her face tightened, and then she did something unexpected. She laughed, not a happy laugh, a sharp, broken one. This is ridiculous, she said. You're acting like I killed someone. Mike's wife muttered under her breath, you kind of did. My wife whipped her head toward her. You don't get to talk. But Mike's wife didn't flinch. I already lost my marriage too, she said. Because of you. That silence afterward was heavy. Even my wife didn't have a response ready for that. She turned back to me again, and this time her voice changed. Less defensive, more desperate. What do you want me to do? That question. Finally, the real one. Not excuses, not rewriting, just consequences. I thought about it. Honestly, for the first time all night, I didn't answer immediately, because the answer wasn't emotional anymore. It was practical and simple. Leave, I said again. She shook her head. Oh, where do I go? And I realized something cold and clear in that moment. She hadn't even thought that far ahead. She had planned the betrayal. She had not planned the aftermath. That's when I understood the full scale of her denial. She believed she could step out of our marriage without stepping out of her life. That everything else would stay intact. I walked to the door and opened it. Cold air hit the room. I don't care where, I said, just not here. She stood there for a long time, then finally picked up the suitcase. And for a moment, I thought she might say something meaningful, something real. Instead she said, you're going to regret this. Same sentence, different moment. And I realized she had nothing left to offer but threats and recycled lines. Mike's wife stepped aside to let her pass, and my wife stopped at the doorway. turned back one last time, and said something quieter. I still love you. I didn't respond, because I didn't believe it mattered anymore, and she left. The door closed, not dramatically, not like in movies, just a normal door closing, but it changed everything. For a few seconds nobody moved. Mike's wife was still standing near the doorway, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to exist in the same space anymore. I stayed by the open door, just listening to the street outside. No car starting, no shouting, just quiet. Then I closed the door, and it felt final in a way I wasn't prepared for. Not relief, not happiness, more like the end of something your body was used to carrying, even if it was hurting you. Mike's wife finally spoke. She's going to try to contact you, she said. I nodded. I know. She'll flip between apology and anger. I know. She'll try to rewrite it. I know. There was a pause. Then she added quietly, they all do. That stuck with me more than anything else she said, because it sounded like experience, not opinion. She sat down again, this time more slowly, like her body had finally caught up with what her life had become. I left my husband tonight, she repeated. I looked at her. She gave a short laugh. And now I don't even know what I'm supposed to feel. That was probably the most honest thing anyone had said all night. We sat there for a while, not talking much, just absorbing the fact that both of our marriages had ended in the same hour, in the same house, because of the same secret. At some point, she checked her phone, then sighed. He's blowing up my phone, she said. I didn't ask who. I already knew. Eventually, I stood up. The adrenaline from earlier was gone now. What replaced it wasn't emotion. It was exhaustion. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water I didn't really want. Mike's wife followed me in after a moment. I should go, she said. I nodded. No. She hesitated at the door, then said, I'm sorry. I looked at her for a second, and realized she meant it in a way that didn't ask for forgiveness, just acknowledgement. I know, I said. She left a few minutes later, and then I was alone, fully alone. For the first time in months, the house felt different, not empty, just unoccupied, like it had been waiting for this version of reality to finally arrive. I sat on the couch and looked around at everything that used to mean something. Pictures, furniture, routine, memory, and I realized something strange. Nothing had physically changed, but everything was over, and the next morning was going to be the real beginning of what came after. I didn't really sleep, or maybe I did in short bursts, the kind where you wake up every hour thinking your brain is trying to catch up with reality. When morning came, the house looked normal again, which was the most disturbing part. Sunlight on the kitchen floor, the coffee machine blinking like nothing happened, the dog acting like it was just another day, but nothing was normal. My phone had about 40 missed notifications, texts, calls, voicemails, from her, from unknown numbers, from people I hadn't spoken to in years. I didn't open any of them at first, just set the phone down and stared at it like it might explode. Then it started again. Us. I finally checked one message. It was from my wife. We need to talk. Please don't do this. I made a mistake, but I can fix it. I laughed once. Same pattern, same right attempt, same refusal to accept that fix was no longer a valid word. Then another message came and immediately after, I left my stuff at Sarah's. I'll come by later. So, even now she was still using names like shields. Like referencing other people made everything less real. I turned my phone off. That was the first real decision I made that morning. Not emotional, just functional. A boundary. A few hours later, there was a knock at the door again. My stomach dropped instantly, but it wasn't her. It was Mike. He looked worse than the night before, tired in a different way, like he hadn't processed anything yet. He didn't come inside right away, just stood there holding his phone. I got everything, he said. What everything? He hesitated. Messages? Calls? Some stuff they didn't even realize was saved. I nodded slowly. I wasn't sure I wanted more evidence, but I took the phone anyway, and I saw it. Not just emotional messages, not just cheating confirmations. Alas, made-ups, jokes about us, scheduling, even discussions about timing it right so neither of us would suspect at the same time. It wasn't messy. It was organized. That's what made it worse. Mike looked at me. I think they've been doing this longer than we know, he said quietly. I didn't answer, because part of me already knew that too. He added, what are you going to do? I looked down at the phone, at everything, at the lies that had been carefully maintained like a second job, and I realized something. There was no version of reconciliation that didn't require me to forget what I had just seen, and I couldn't. Not anymore. I don't know yet, I said, but I did know one thing. I wasn't going back to the person I was before that knock on the door, and neither was he. After Mike left, the house felt even quieter than before. Not peaceful quiet, more like something had been removed from the environment and the space hadn't adjusted yet. I sat with the phone he gave me for a long time. I didn't keep scrolling. I didn't need to. Once you see the pattern, you don't need every detail. It's all the same shape. Different day. Same choices. My wife's messages kept coming in even though my phone was off. Voicemails started stacking up. I eventually turned it back on just to see the volume of it. That was a mistake. There were apologies, then accusations, then apologies again, then anger, then back to pleading. It was like watching someone cycle through every possible emotional angle to regain access to a life they had already exited. One message stood out. You're making a huge mistake. We had a good life. You're throwing it away over one mistake. One mistake. 7 months. I just stared at it, because that framing told me everything. In her mind, time didn't accumulate weight. It just reset when she decided it should. Later in the afternoon, she showed up anyway. Of course she did. I saw her car outside first. She didn't come in immediately. She sat in it for almost 10 minutes, then finally got out. She looked different. Not physically, but in posture, like she was carrying something heavy and pretending she wasn't. When she knocked, I opened the door but didn't step aside. She tried to smile. It didn't land. I just want to talk, she said. I shook my head. We already did. She stepped forward slightly anyway. I ended it, she said quickly. I cut contact. It's done. That should have meant something. At another time in my life, it might have. But all I could think about was how easy it is to end something when it's already been discovered. I don't care, I said. Her expression cracked a bit. I'm trying, she said. No, I replied. You're reacting. That stopped her. Because it was true. She wasn't rebuilding anything. She was responding to collapse. There's a difference. A big one. She looked past me into the house, like she expected things to still be arranged in a way that included her. Then she said something softer. I don't want to lose you. I nodded slowly. But you already did. That sentence hung there longer than anything else. No anger behind it. Just fact. She started crying again, but it felt different this time. Less performative. More like realization finally catching up. I don't know how to fix this, she whispered. For the first time, I believed her. And that might have been the most painful part. Because some things are fixable in the way people hope. They just end. Slowly or suddenly. But they end. I stepped back slightly. Not to comfort her. Just to close the interaction. I'm not your project anymore, I said. And I closed the door. She didn't knock again after that. At least not for a while. The silence that followed wasn't clean. It was layered. Like multiple conversations still echoing in different rooms of the same house. Over the next days, things became procedural. Not emotional anymore. Logistics. Separation papers were mentioned. Bank accounts were checked. Friends started texting things like I'm sorry this happened and I had no idea. That last one always felt strange to read. Because of course they didn't. That's how these things work. Most people only see the version you let them see. Mike and I talked a bit more during that time. Not constantly. Just enough to confirm we were both moving in the same direction. Not as friends, really. More like two people standing in the aftermath of the same explosion, comparing injuries. There was one conversation I remember clearly. He asked me, do you hate her? I thought about it, honestly, and I realized I didn't have enough energy left for hate. Hate feels like caring, I said. He nodded. Yeah, he replied. I get that. As for her, she tried a few more times. Texts turned into emails when I stopped responding. Emails turned into longer messages. Long messages turned into apologies mixed with memories. The good times. The version of us before. As if early love could cancel later betrayal. And can't. At some point, she stopped writing as frequently. Not because things improved, but because repetition loses power when there's no response. One day, I was sitting in the kitchen and realized I hadn't checked my phone in hours. That was new. The urgency was fading, not the memory. That part stayed, but the emotional grip was loosening. And that's when I understood something important. Healing doesn't feel like recovery. It feels like distance. One evening, I walked through the house and noticed how many things were just neutral again. A chair wasn't ours. A room wasn't the bedroom where everything broke. It was just a house. Not a symbol, not a memory machine. Just space. And I realized I had two choices going forward. Stay inside the story forever, or step out of it completely. Not by forgetting, but by refusing to relive it. The last thing I heard from her directly was a message that said, I still don't understand how you could stop loving me so fast. I didn't reply, because that wasn't what happened. Love didn't stop fast. Trust day. And once trust is gone, love doesn't really have anywhere to stand anymore. That was the lesson I didn't want, but got anyway. And if there's anything I tell someone reading this who thinks they're overreacting to changes in their partner, pay attention to what's consistent, not what's explained. People can explain anything, but they can't sustain two lives forever without one of them showing through. Eventually, truth leaks. It always does. And when it does, you don't lose the version of them you imagined. You discover the version that was there the whole time. That's the part that actually breaks you, not the betrayal. The clarity. End of story. Like and subscribe.